Hello and welcome to Produce Talks, the CPMA podcast. I'm your host and CPMA Education Manager, Jason Gorley. Before we get started, remember you can subscribe to us on iTunes, Nobex, or now you can find us in the Google Play Store. I also want to remind you that if you check out elearning.cpma.ca, you can find out all about our online learning that we're building, and you can also check out our webinars to find out what's next and sign up for it. We do have a couple coming up this fall, so keep an eye on elearning.cpma.ca for details. On the podcast this month, we're going to have part one of a conversation with a panel of food service experts in the produce industry. The panel will tackle everything from how technology is changing the industry to what's happening with the overlap between food service and retail operations, and what changes are going to happen with the food service part of the distribution chain in the next 10 years. So, please welcome.
Hi, I'm Dan Martin, the Senior Director of Produce for Sysco Canada.
Hi, I'm Tim York. I'm President of Markon Cooperative based in Salinas, California.
I'm Colleen Goto. I'm the Vice President of Sales and Marketing for FreshPoint here in Vancouver.
Hello, I'm Sean Walsh, North American Director for Fruits, Vegetables, and Dairy for Gordon Food Service.
Colleen, there's lots of overlap between retail and food service in retail prepared foods to grow versus restaurants in the next 10 years. So what opportunities do you see as existing, and what does this mean for food service distribution?
Well, I think that there's always been a retail prepared foods. It's just a matter of the growth of it now with the home meal replacements. As far as I can see, the opportunities that are there are that retail stores are doing a great job of imitating or mimicking what is available in a restaurant. So for people who are maybe a little more budget conscious, they can get restaurant quality food in a retail prepared. On the food service side, this is something that they can tap into, and instead of looking at maybe always looking at a traditional customer in a restaurant, they can look at these delis and prepared food areas inside of these retail stores and see them as individual opportunities and restaurants for themselves. But the other side as well, I would say, as long as there are quality restaurants that are available, that the HMR category is going to grow to a certain length, but everybody, especially in this millennial age, wants to go out. They're looking to eat out. They're looking to Instagram and Pinterest these things out, and I think that retails would do themselves a lot of good by following those and looking at the trends of what is good in prepared foods by doing that.
Well, let's hop across the border then to Michigan. And Sean, I want to know, what are your thoughts?
Colleen made some excellent points in that the lines between retail and restaurant, while have always been blurring, they seem to be blurring at a much faster rate. And whether it's conventional restaurants getting into the to-go or delivery part of the HMR, or retailers coming in and getting more into actual seating within their retail facilities, that line is blurring. I think one of the things I'm seeing in the food service area that's a focus for us and should be a focus as we move forward is to continue to utilize the chefs and the customers' expertise that we have at our fingertips to make sure that product quality trends and innovation, that the food service industry is on the front end of that. It's key that we provide those operators, our operators, with those options that will keep them competitive in this space.
Dan, are you thinking the same thing that Sean's thinking?
I would be aligned with Sean's thoughts on the overlap. We see it with our competitors in the food service arena being the home meal replacement. In the arenas that we play in, that home meal replacement has started to entice some of our traditional chefs from our restaurants into that realm. So there will continue to be crossover. I think it will get narrower and narrower, but we're looking forward to changing the way that we do business to adapt accordingly.
And Tim?
Yeah, Dan didn't mention it, but you may have read that Sysco has an alliance with Kroger, which tells you that traditional food service distributors have to be looking differently at their business model beyond just traditional restaurants. When you look at the numbers from Technomic, retail food service is expected to grow at about a 12% rate over the next 5 years, and conventional food service at about 2%. I think what everybody has said is true. We've got to pay attention to that market, help our traditional restaurants succeed, and then also look at different business models as well.
What about services like Blue Apron and those ones that are offering kind of prepared meals to the doorstep? Is that affecting the way that you look at the food service industry, or is that just seen as something that's totally separate and niche right now?
I think that's a completely separate niche for people. A lot of people do it for meal replacement if they're doing something along the lines of a cleanse, or they're gluten-free, or they're all organic and they want everything pre-prepared. That's what a lot of it is for when you've got a delivery, especially when it's very specific. Here in Vancouver on the West Coast, we have very specific ones that are all organic or all raw or all these kinds of things, and they're very specific to a certain very, very narrow clientele. So I think that is a certain niche market, or at least it is out here.
Yeah, this is Sean. I think I would add to Colleen's comments that, it is a niche market. I think we're obviously all paying attention to it. It means slightly different to the home meal replacement option of the components going to a consumer, and then they still have to assemble the meal. That kind of leans towards the earlier discussion around the restaurant experience portion. But one thing to keep on our radar is then, does that component piece from these sources then become available to and a good option for the food service operator? And if so, then we'll definitely have to be able to offer similar options for our customers.
An article on Perishable Pundit highlighted shorter supplies of produce. So what will this mean for overall pricing, availability, and quality of produce in terms of food service?
So as I think through that one, of course, so much of the short supplies and pricing and availability is speculative when we think about produce. And in general, this year it might be broccoli, next year it might be cauliflower, the following year it could be something else based on crop conditions and what have you. But what isn't or hasn't been speculative is, of course, the increase in demand year over year, both in the consumer and the food service segment around fresh and healthy options. And so as I look at where some of these availability, quality, and cost pieces come into play, it's where can we then bring options to our customers to make sure that we can get our fair share of the wallet and be able to provide a cost-effective and safe, healthy options for our customers.
As far as there being shorter supplies of produce, I think it's all relative on demand. Just in my own opinion, we currently throughout North America, we continue to disc under fields and disc under product that we don't get good returns on. If we look back in history, for years we've said, hey, we're running out of ag land, we're running out of product, but the reality is that we've never run out, and I think we've gotten smarter as the growers have gotten smarter. So the introduction of more hothouse program, aquaponics, hydroponics, a whole gamut that is non-traditional farming, it does allow us to look at different avenues for product. As far as how that affects overall pricing, this past winter and current spring with the El Nino and El Nina, it has caused our growers to have shorter yields and raise the consumer prices. The consumers appear to continue to be paying for the product because they have put them on their menus and they are getting used to having fresh product. I think that they are looking for alternate sources, though, and we have seen that on the food service side with some of our customers moving away from traditional fresh to more frozen product during the high markets. The price is affecting us quite a bit as relation to selling fresh. As far as availability and quality, I think the consumers' palates are going to change. We've seen the hothouse products in I'll say north of the border in Canada become very traditional or very mainstream items. In the European cucumbers and English cucumbers, south of the border, we still see a lot of field pack product. North, we are very much following the European. So growing has changed, and the farmers have changed, and I think we'll be comfortable going ahead in the future with source of product.
I think Dan and Sean have both hit on some very good points. The observation I would make is that with the cost of farming now, growers are not speculating like they used to in the past. Dan's right. We still continue to see growers disking product under. We saw a lot of acreage at the end of Yuma season, spring of 2016, that got disked under because customers that moved basically north and other production areas came on before Yuma Desert area finished. We are seeing growers that aren't willing to speculate as much, that are looking for contracts when they're putting seed into the ground, that they want to know where that product is going. And I think the resulting markets that Dan commented on are a result of that.
I think that every year we have these things that say we don't have enough of this, we don't have enough of that or whatever. But we seem to get through that and the next year something else, that it is as growers and suppliers of these products become a little smarter and the technology helps us, it becomes less of an issue. And I think also, too, people look at different products. Maybe cauliflower isn't the best item for them this time. Maybe we start looking at non-traditional items to start really eating. Kohlrabi and celery root and all these wacky things that we never probably looked at before.
And now we have to take a short break from the conversation to hear from our sponsor. All right, and it's time once again to check in with our sponsor, and I have Ray from Nature Fresh on the line. Ray, how are things going at Nature Fresh? Busy part of the season?
Very much so. Greenhouse vegetables are at their peak right now. Plenty of product available to fill your salad needs, fill your plate, fill more than half your plate as you prepare your meals. Buy local is a big thing right now. Lots of local production happening, especially from our Leamington area. Nature Fresh Farms has an abundance of greenhouse vegetables that consumers can choose from.
And Ray, how are things going with the Greenhouse Education Center?
Well, we've got a couple of strong weeks coming up. First 3 weeks in August, we will be in Southern Ontario visiting additional retail locations. Please check our Greenhouse Education Center site at our website for locations near you.
Great. Thanks, Ray. And now back to the conversation.
We're seeing almost unprecedented changes in technologies for agriculture that are coming out right now. So things like robotics, drones, big data automation, indoor farming, what is all this going to mean in terms of food service and that distribution?
When we read about automation within fresh produce or technology being applied towards fresh produce, we really see that. I think best example is in the indoor farming, vertical farms, and even some of that technology, of course, applied in the hothouses, tomatoes, cucumbers, bell peppers that are being used there. So much of what we see, though, in the Salinas Valley of technology is helping the growers be smarter and better about their farming practices. Having moisture monitors to understand what the evaporation rate is and soil moisture sensors to tell them when it's the right time to water. So much of that growers would tell you they get on a watering cycle, for example, every third day. Well, is that really the right time to do it, or is it when the moisture hits a certain point? And so when we talk about big data, that's really, I think we've yet to really see it applied in production, but I think we will as growers begin to understand that. Part of that's driven by customers wanting to know more about sustainability, how we're using our natural resources, and part of it simply is because of the cost of water, the cost of other inputs, and the cost of labor, that automation, big data has to be applied at the production end of it. In terms of direct application, though, to food service, I see that just primarily in indoor vertical farming and then again the hothouse.
The changes that the growers will make in their agriculture practices will affect food service, as food service tends to want to be on trend, and as more and more of the communication gets out, and whether it's an item that we may or may not have validity, like an aquaponic, where we use a local grower hothouse and we use fish from the Pacific Ocean and they help feed the plants. Once the restaurateur or the chefs, as we know, they control a lot of the TV time, it'll force our industry to make changes. The traditional iceberg lettuces and romaine lettuces will always be there. They're not going anywhere, but as soon as we can get publicized a little bit by some chefs, I think that will change the mindset and maybe the thought process on where people will buy their product.
Does it change the whole communication plan as well?
I would say yes. We ourselves, like in Gordon Food Service, we market directly to chefs. We have chefs on staff that spend time with other chefs, and the whole communication piece is really our job as the produce professionals to get in front of them and ensure that we're keeping them on mark as it relates to the trends or the changes in agriculture and the changes that we will do to find source product.
I think the biggest issue is going to be this shortage of labor for agriculture. I mean, it's the same issue that food service is having, just trying to find back-of-house staff and people who want to be in this industry, people coming up through it. So I think that's going to be our biggest obstacle going into the future is this shortage of labor for everyone.
Yeah, some really good discussion. I guess as I think about the topic, there are two portions of it that get me pretty excited about the future. One, the big data, and we're seeing some real advantages specifically in the U.S., but it's coming along for Canada as well, where we're going to have better information in the food service industry, similar to what retail has had for many years around actual trend data, sales data, movement data, and I think all of that can help us make better decisions and help us remove cost and shrink and all other forms of waste in our system, which will help. The other part is this indoor vertical farming. I'm very excited about where the potential can go for that. I realize that it still is on the early part of the stages, but we've gotten to a point where there is now the ability of technology has gotten the lighting, the electricity costs in a place where there's actually profitability can happen in this space. And once something becomes profitable, it tends to grow, no pun intended. But I'm really excited, especially for Canada, as we think about all the miles that we transport produce throughout the country, is we can start to have some of these indoor vertical farming facilities provide some of the products that we need. It can really be a benefit both in freshness, quality, and even in its sustainability footprint.
We've seen a few different news stories pop up about vegetables replacing a traditional protein at the center of the plate. So this, combined with the increase of vegetarian and vegan restaurants, how is this affecting and changing the produce that's offered for food service?
Yeah, I guess my thought on will vegetables replace the center of the plate? I don't think so. My reasonings behind that are the data that we have through Technomics is indulgence is still high on the reasons for eating away from home. So, as much as people want to go to the restaurant and eat as healthy as they can, there is still an indulgence factor. What we are seeing, though, is the choices on the menus changing and focusing more on 50% of our plate being fresh fruits and vegetables, more offerings, as most of you that have seen, larger salad selections that offer proteins or multiple proteins, whether it be steak, chicken, or seafood. So we're seeing that expand. We're also seeing limited time offerings in non-traditional restaurants that are focusing on produce, where you wouldn't think you're going to a quick serve restaurant and get a fresh, healthy salad with different fruits on it. So it is being addressed. As far as what we need to do to change or to stay on task, we need to be very ambiguous in what we offer. I think for Broadline, what it's done is it's caused us to really rethink our business, and we cannot operate how we used to in the past, carrying your standard typical items. We've looked into how do we staff our produce departments? What type of people do we need? What are their strengths? How do we have a specialty produce program? How do we not only buy it, but how do we sell it, and how do we service our customers with it? So it really has caused food service, ourselves, and I would say probably the people from Gordon's on the phone to, relook at how we do fresh produce from a Broadline perspective, and we cannot just be, potatoes and oranges and apples. We need to be everything to everybody.
I like the way that Jerry Ludwig, who works with Gordon Food Service, puts it. He doesn't see vegetables or fruit replacing traditional protein. What he refers to as what he calls veg-centric menus, where vegetables take a much more prominent place and protein sizes begin to shrink. And you see that trend already on menus. You've seen it even in the eating guidelines out of USDA. But the idea of veg-centric, where they're really the stars. In fact, I was just looking at an Epicurious recipe over the weekend that's talking about how you've got to treat vegetables, or you can treat vegetables much the way you would with meats, where you're marinating them, or you're brining them, or you're putting a barbecue sauce in them, and those kind of things. So I think it's rethinking the role of vegetables on the plate. Again, protein costs are part of the driver of that, but also just the interest in healthier eating makes a difference.
Exactly. I don't think that we're ever going to replace the traditional protein center of the plate. I think that chefs, as they get more creative, the things that come on the plate with it, or maybe the sides, or become more interesting. But I don't think in the whole scheme of things that it will ever be the center of the plate, whether it's fish that gets more than a red meat or anything else. Also the onset of all these hormone-free, organic, those kinds of things on the protein side as well, that they are able to compete on that. I just believe that chefs just become much more creative with the sides and start building the sides separately with the vegetables.
Yeah, I think the group has done a great job of laying out that story that it is more about balancing the plate with more fruits and vegetables than it is from replacing the center of the protein piece. So I would definitely agree with that. I think one of the fun things, and Colleen called it out, is as we're seeing, as all of us are probably customers as well, as we go to some of our favorite restaurants, and we're noticing that they're just being very creative in how they use produce and around how they drive new consumer loyalty. They can also drive some lower cost in their plate to help make products more affordable and their pricing more affordable to the customer. I think there's just a lot of innovation happening, especially in that small private ownership model of restaurant where they're really taking advantage of all the opportunities that are out there today for produce.
All right, so that's it for the conversation this month. But before we go, I'm joined once again by Selena Karkash, who is our marketing coordinator here at CPMA. And you're here to tell us all about the Fresh Health Award winner for July.
I am. So the Fresh Health Award, as you know, is a monthly award that we give to anybody who is promoting Half Your Plate or the Fredgie Children's Program. So this month we're giving it to Domex Super Fresh growers because they have put the Half Your Plate logo on their cherry bags. And as you know, cherries are in season, so these bags are flying off the shelf.
So if somebody wants to nominate somebody for this Fresh Health Award, or somebody's doing really something amazing with either Fredgie or Half Your Plate, how do they let you know so they can win this award for themselves?
Absolutely. We want to see all the examples. So all you have to do is send an email to skarkash@cpma.ca.
Thanks, Selena.
You're welcome.
And that's it. That's all that we have for you this month on the podcast. I'd like to thank Dan Markon from Sysco Canada, Colleen Goto from FreshPoint Vancouver, Sean Walsh from Gordon Food Service, and Tim York from Markon Cooperative for being here today. I'd also like to thank Nature Fresh, our sponsor, and I'd like to thank you for listening. Remember, we want to hear from you. You can email us by emailing podcast@cpma.ca. That's podcast@cpma.ca. And that's it. So we'll have part 2 of our conversation 1 month from now. And until then, make a healthy choice. Fill half your plate with fruits and veggies.
You will now be disconnected by the moderator.